Welcome to, again, Assumption Virtually. My name is Tyler Harrington. I'm an undergraduate admissions counselor here at Assumption. And we have a ton of faculty and current students here today to talk to you about the humanities at Assumption. I do want to introduce Dean Paula Fitzpatrick. She'll be here to sort of introduce you to the rest of the faculty, the rest of the staff, and sort of guide us through this presentation. So with that, Dean Fitzpatrick, I will hand it over to you.
Okay, well, thank you. First off, let me take the opportunity to congratulate you on your acceptance to Assumption University. So I know this has been a particularly challenging junior and senior year for all of you. And so it is an incredible accomplishment to have been accepted to college. And we look forward to sharing with you some of the educational opportunities we have here at Assumption, and wish you the best of luck as you're making your final decisions about where you want to head next year. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen briefly, just to give you an overview of a couple pieces of information about Assumption. So as Tyler said, I am Paula Fitzpatrick. I am a faculty member in the psychology department, as well as the Dean of Liberal Arts and Sciences at Assumption. And I'm just going to kick off this presentation today by providing you a couple framing questions about why you might want to consider Assumption, why I think we are unique. I'm going to give you just a little brief nugget about our core curriculum and our career development and internship center. And then we're going to spend the bulk of our time talking about the academic offerings in the humanities. And our students will share their personal experiences with you, and our department chairs will offer a few highlights about what is unique and distinctive about their programs. So why should you consider Assumption? So as you are working your way through the rest of the presentation that you're listening to today, a couple orienting questions I would like you to keep in the back of your mind. First, I think Assumption is unique and important because we really provide students the opportunities to personalize their education. We have a wide variety of majors, minors, and concentrations that can be put together in a variety of unique ways to really fit whatever your unique interests might be. The other thing that is important about the education that you will receive at Assumption is that it is grounded in the Catholic liberal education tradition. And this is really important because it ensures that you gain a strong foundation, not only in the particular discipline that you're going to be studying, but also that you have a practice reading and thinking about the important big questions in life. So I think one of the important lessons that we have learned through this pandemic is the critical importance of having a sense of meaning and purpose, especially to get us through some of the tough times in life. And I was recently reading an excerpt from a book called An Altar in the World, where Barbara Brown Taylor made this observation. Call me a romantic, but I think most people want to be good for something. I think they want to do something that matters, to be part of something bigger than themselves, to give themselves to something that is meaningful instead of meaningless. And the education that you receive at Assumption is going to give you the time and the space to ponder some of these questions and to read some of the great works so that you can figure out what your personal path is, not only in choosing a potential profession, but really to prepare you for your entire life as you are moving forward. You'll begin to do this right off the bat through our core curriculum, which allows you to gain exposure to a wide variety of different areas that you need in order to be able to discern your calling, as well as to have a solid foundation for living the rest of your life. So we have core seminars right in the center in English, philosophy, and theology. We'll gain exposure to scientific and quantitative reasoning in the STEM fields. You'll gain some understanding of culture and expression through art and music and global studies. Our history and social sciences will give you an appreciation of person and society, and our great conversation will allow you to deepen your ability to engage in reading and writing and discussion of some of the big questions of life. Our Compass program, our first year program, allows you to gain an orientation to this core curriculum during your first year. Our Compass program, called Common Pursuit of Academic and Social Success, allows you to build relationships with your faculty members and fellow students in 2 linked classes that you'll be taking together, one in a core seminar in philosophy, English, or theology, and then another academic course. The same set of students exist in both of those classes, so you can build a sense of community and some important friendships that probably some of the students that you'll hear from today will tell you really last for their entire educational career. The other point that I want to mention that is important and distinctive about Assumption is that those relationships that you start building right within your Compass program are foundational and key to an Assumption education. So Emmanuel Dalzon, his educational philosophy really was centered around the importance of an educational community and establishing a family spirit so that students can learn and thrive. And so those are some foundational principles. So as you're listening to people today, just listen with your heart as well as your ears to see what sort of evidence you see for these in the stories that you're going to be hearing. Now, it's also important that an essential piece of the reason many students are coming to college is also that they want to launch themselves for a potential career. So in addition to the emphasis on academics, we also have a career development and internship center, which allows students to develop some of those career readiness competencies. And we have a 4-year roadmap that helps guide students through the process of what they should be doing each step of the way. In the time that we have remaining, we're going to hear about some of the humanities offerings that we have at Assumption. So we have a full slate of options in art and music, education, English, global studies, history, the languages, Spanish is a major, and we also have minors in French and Italian and offer courses in Latin. Students can pursue philosophy, political science, pre-law, and theology as all of the academic offerings. You're going to be hearing about a few of those academic offerings in the time that we have remaining. So I'm going to turn the floor over now to, oops, hold a second. To Lily O'Connor, who is going to share with you some of her experience with the communication and media program at Assumption.
Thank you, Dean Fitzpatrick. So nice to see you today, Max, Victoria, and Gabby. Congratulations on your acceptance to Assumption. My name is Lily, and I'm a current senior here. So I'm a double major in Spanish and English with a concentration in media and communications and a minor in philosophy. And the first thing that I want to say about the English major is that it's definitely very attainable to have a double major in a minor, major in a couple of minors. And I guess I'm an example of that. Through the core, it's really easy to get some courses to double count. And that was one of the things that was really alluring to me about Assumption and the core and how it kind of communicates with the different humanities majors. Along with that, I'm a media and communications major. And with that major, I have a kind of like just a diversity of courses within it. So I've taken literature courses. I'm in a film course right now that counts toward my major. I've taken different media courses. My capstone that I'm in right now is actually creating a podcast to be aired on a local radio station. So within the diversity of different English courses, I feel like the major has prepared me to be the best communicator, the best writer, speaker, reader that I can be. And that was my goal in attaining, pursuing my bachelor's, as well as the different diversity of classes and how it's been relatively easy for me to add a double major and a minor. I'm also involved on campus too. I'm on the crew team and I'm a tutor TA, and I've actually become a tutor TA through my work in my English major. So that's been really exciting to see my work in the classroom kind of move to an on-campus job. And that happens with a lot of students I know. Not to speak for her, but Chloe's a tutor TA with me for history. So it's really great to kind of get to be really passionate about your major and to be able to share that with different students. I've also been really lucky to have 2 internships while I've been here. I interned at Bayard Press last summer, and that's a Catholic publishing company. They do like Catholic Digest and things like that, and I translated for them. And I'm currently an intern at the Office of Communications, and I'm actually working on developing our new AU mobile app. So very different internships, but a lot of great experience through the communications and media major that have kind of pushed me to try different internships and experiment with different things. So I've been really fortunate to love my major, and I know you'll all pick majors that you love, but I really can't speak highly enough about what I've learned from being a communications major, just in my ability to articulate, read well, and write well. So with that, I'm gonna pass it over to Professor Thureen, the chair of the English department.
Good afternoon. I was lucky enough to have Lily in her English composition course. I think it was the fall or spring of her first year. And so one of the great things about teaching, and I know I speak for all the faculty on the panel this afternoon, one of the great things about teaching at a small school like Assumption is that we get often the chance to teach students early in their careers and then later in their careers, or work with them through some club on campus, perhaps something like the Provoc, the student newspaper, or a student literary magazine, or some other extracurricular activity that students are engaged in. But I just want to mention a couple of things about the 2 majors in the English department. One of those is, as Lily was mentioning, what's now called the major in communication and media. And then the other one is the traditional English major, or what you might think of as the study of literature. And I'm going to come at this just a little bit backwards. I want to kind of start out by having you think for a minute about the different kinds of careers that study in these disciplines might lead you to. The traditional kinds of pathways for English majors in literature would be in professions such as law, banking, education, insurance, but all kinds of other work and careers are available as well. Anything that would involve reading, collating, interpreting written evidence, writing about things from a variety of sources. So think about management, think about marketing, human resources, strategic communications, as Lily mentioned, wealth management, even real estate. One of the things you're learning in all of the humanities fields, English among them, is speaking clearly about complex subjects, speaking with some degree of nuance. And so, all of the faculty here and all the students here have had that kind of experience as part of their major. And so those are some of the skills that you're going to learn. On the other side of things, of course, those career paths are available to students studying communication and media as well. But we also have courses that would allow you to learn technical skills like video production, graphic design, or perhaps I'll be more specific about one, journalism, and there'd be a couple of different courses in the communication and media major that would help you learn journalism skills. But then, of course, you would want to bolster that by working on the Provoc as either first probably a staff writer and then later as a junior or senior on the editorial staff. And I'm sure that, as students, the 4 of you who are here, 3 maybe now, 4 of you here, know that I'm just going to go on a limb and guess because you're here, that sort of says a lot about your curiosity and your eagerness to seize life. And I would say it's not going to surprise you that the student representatives here are similar to you in that way. but I would also guess that you are pretty involved at your high schools. And so you've been engaged with different kinds of extracurricular activities. And so you know from your own experience how much those things can connect and expand the learning you do in the classroom. I just want to mention a couple other things about these two majors. The seniors in the English major, one of their courses is the senior seminar. This is a seminar limited to 15 people. Often it will just have 12 students in it, and those students will complete a semester-long study, either based on a historical period or a kind of thematic question or problem. And I'll just mention the two titles of the senior seminars in literature for next fall. One is 21st Century British Literature and Culture. So you can kind of tell from the title what that's about. But if you ever watch PBS with your parents, Masterpiece, those kinds of things, that's part of the culture that's being talked about. But then there's all kinds of other things as well. There'll be a study of film and literature. And then the other course I want to mention, this one has less to do with the period, well, than a kind of problem. And if you've been reading the newspaper at all this week or in the last year, you'll kind of see immediately how this course responds to our current moment. The title of the course is an American course, and the title of the course is African American Literature, Music, and Photography as a Response to Racial Trauma. And so it doesn't take much to think about how that course is a reflection of our current historical moment, and how the text that you'll study in there, the literature, the music, the photography, will both help you think about the tradition of those art forms and how they've responded to particular experiences of African Americans in our country. The last thing I kind of want to say here is I want to flip over to the other side there and talk for a minute about the communication and media major that Lily is studying. We start students out there with 3 courses, and this major is really writing intensive. So if you like to write, this is one of the places that you would probably at least consider winding up. We begin with what we call 3 gateway courses. The first one is a sophomore level persuasive writing course called Argument and Persuasion. The next one is another sort of sophomore level course, but of course many juniors take it, to Introduction to Journalism. The first, and I want to be sure to mention this to you because Dean Fitzpatrick mentioned our Compass program. And as she mentioned, typically a Compass linkage will consist of one course in the core seminars, and then another one that allows you to explore an interest of yours that you might be thinking about as a major. And so this course is English 214, Introduction to Communication and Media. And it'll be taught by the professor who is a specialist in communication and media, who is actually teaching the course Lily mentioned, in which she and her classmates are producing a series of podcasts. It's 3 altogether, I think, Lily, right?
We each have our own 3-part podcast series. So I think there's like 6.
Okay, so and Lily didn't go into detail there, but when she says podcast, she means they are figuring out the topic, the scope of the topic, figuring out who they need to interview, what the background music should be, how the stories should be structured, the sequencing of the 3 podcasts in the series, and so on. So there's a lot to that, and then of course the technical work on top of all that. The other part of the major in communication media I want to mention then is that there are 3 different specialties students can do. And so depending on your interest, I'll just kind of name the 3. The first of those possible specialties, and each of these specialties, you would choose one of the 3, not all 3, but you'd take 3 courses in each of these areas. One is journalism and professional writing. Another is creative writing. And the third is media studies and production, which would involve things ranging from graphic design to speech to video production. And so it's really depending on your skills, you might be prompted to do even more writing in that specialty, or you might decide, hey, here's my chance to learn some technical skills that I'm going to use as a lever to get me into an internship, and a professional career in communications. I think I'm about out of time. I want to hand things over to our history student, and I'm going to guess that's Chloe.
That's me. Happy to share a little bit about my experience as a history major. So my name is Chloe Moore. I am a senior here at Assumption, originally from Holden, Massachusetts, and I am a history major with minors in education and community service learning. So just to kind of give a little overview of some of my kind of highlights of being a part of the history department, I've really enjoyed all the different classes that I've taken over the past 4 years. I've been able to take classes from both US history to European history, global studies, and kind of all across different areas of the world and learning about the history. And I really enjoy how a lot of these courses are really dedicated to a very specific historic event, such as the Vietnam War, or learning more about 9/11 or the Revolutionary America time period. So it's really great to kind of dive in and learn about one specific topic in great detail. And many of these classes are discussion based, which is something I really appreciate because you're not only learning from your professor, but also from your classmates. And that's been a really great experience kind of in the classroom environment. But one thing that's really big in the history department here is our efforts for experiential learning. And I've had some really wonderful opportunities to work closely with multiple different professors. But over the past year specifically, I've worked very closely with Professor Kais, and I've worked with him on his own digital humanities projects, the Adverts 250 project and Slavery Adverts 250 project through independent studies. So as a senior, I've had some time in my schedule to work closely with one professor and really get to see how what I'm learning in the classroom can be applied to the field. So specifically looking into public history. And just to give a brief overview of these projects I'm working on, because I think it's a really cool way to be able to kind of take what I've learned in history, but also use different skills in this experiential learning experience. So the Adverts 250 project explores the history of advertising in 18th century America while featuring a daily image of an advertisement published in a newspaper 250 years ago to the date. So every single day you can go onto the website and check out a advertisement for maybe a different good or service, and also enslaved people from 250 years ago to that day. So right now you'd see advertisements from the year 1771, which is really cool that I'm able to use our databases to access those digital newspapers. And so the Adverts 250 project is on a website, but there is a counterpart, which is the Slavery Adverts 250 project. And Twitter is used for that platform to raise awareness of the significance of advertisements about enslaved people in the era of the American Revolution, which is a period often associated with expanding freedom. So I'm really looking at, how there were so many different advertisements throughout the newspapers for enslaved people at a time when America itself was becoming a new nation. And Professor Kais does feature his history students as guest curators. So I had the opportunity to look closely on this project in my sophomore year and my junior year, which is a great way to be able to access these newspapers and then begin to analyze them. So take what you're learning in class about the time period and kind of give it context with the newspaper. So I was able to do that portion of the project for about 2 years as a junior colleague. But this year as a senior, in my role as more of a research assistant, I am constantly working on the project in more of a behind the scenes manner. So I'm helping create those digital archives of newspapers. I'm preparing the tweets that go out each day, cropping images, lots of kind of organizational skills happening, and making sure that it's all ready to go for each day, being able to go on the Twitter feed to see those daily images, or onto the Adverts 250 website to see the featured advertisement of the day. So this is really a way of kind of doing history, if you will, and kind of seeing what public history is all about, because digital humanities projects are pretty popular. There's lots of different ones for specific, interest within history, but Professor Kais is really interested in the revolutionary period. So being able to work with him and learn from him has been really great. So through this experience, I developed and refined transferable skills, such as my critical thinking, writing skills, problem solving, and information literacy, which will prepare me for the rest of my life and for my postgraduate work. So I did mention that I am a history major, but I am looking to pursue higher education. So I kind of figured that out through my 4 years, that was the path for me, but I'm really excited to combine my passion for history and higher education in the coming years, especially as I'll be in a master's program next year at Boston College. And I will be taking a class about the history of higher education. So that's how I was able to really kind of blend together my multiple passions. But overall, I've had a really wonderful time working in the history department with the professors and my classmates on some really unique projects. So I think at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Professor Kazatsky to share more about the history department.
Thank you so much, Chloe. Chloe is one of our shining stars, and I really appreciate your comments, your generous comments about the department. Yes, I'm representing the department today. I'm Professor Deborah Kasatsky. I'm really happy to be here, talking with all of you and hopefully listening to you as well a bit in the Q&A that follows the session today. History really is a discipline that opens doors, both intellectually and professionally. Students who study history learn to read, to think, to speak, and to write about the ways in which the present and the past are ever unfolding into one another. I always like to tell my students that everything we study, I mean, Chloe mentioned the idea that we have many courses that are topically oriented. And I typically teach even my classes that are broad surveys. I tell students to think about the image of throwing a stone in a pond, and just the stone in the pond generates many broad ripples going out. That's how the relationship is between the present and the past and the future, with these ripples going on infinitely, so that students learn to think about these relationships between the past and the present and the future, and to situate themselves in those rings of the pond in a way I think that's really meaningful. Students, by studying history, learn to think clearly and independently about the people and events and issues that came before, that continue to affect us into the present and into the future. And the great fun of being a history professor is to learn right alongside students as they make these discoveries. And I always make a great many new discoveries every time I teach a class, because I'm often assigning new materials right alongside my students and learning as we go together. We offer diverse courses in the history department. So we offer courses dealing with the history of the United States, Canada, France, Germany, China, Japan, the Middle East, and more. Our classes, as Chloe mentioned, are all pretty discussion oriented. So you get a chance not only to learn how to write and to read, but also to speak and to debate alongside your peers and professors, who learn how to challenge what you're reading, the authors that you read, challenging one another to think about the past in new and creative ways. And our majors go on to careers in a great many different fields, in law, politics, government, archival work, education, and some even end up in graduate school, like Chloe, who she mentioned is starting the graduate program, master's program in higher education at Boston College this coming fall. We're really proud of Chloe. She really represents the promise and potential of Assumption students, and points the way to a brighter future for all of us. So I'm going to keep it pretty short. I'm happy to answer questions in the Q&A period following this. I know that I think we're running a little bit behind, so I won't say too much more, but I do welcome your questions and comments, both in the Q&A that follows or an email if you want to send me after the session is over. Thank you. Oh, I think Gabriella, you're next, right? Okay.
Yes. Thank you, Professor Kazatsky. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gabriella Humphreys, and I'm a graduating senior political science major but I'm also double minoring in Spanish and something that we call the Core Text and Enduring Questions program. So I'm actually going to talk to you a little bit about the Core Text program today, or CTEC for short. It's an endowed program at Assumption University that's generously funded by donors and previous alumni who have benefited from an Assumption liberal arts education. And so the Core Text program is a concentrated liberal arts minor program that specifically focuses on the disciplines of philosophy, politics, art history, and theology. So the Core Text and Enduring Questions program is designed to allow students to engage in dialogue between ancient and modern thinkers and to consider the most enduring and permanent truths about ourselves and the world. There's a reason why we still read and think about books and people who said very important and very famous things thousands of years ago. And we're obviously still reading them today. So in your classes, you will consider questions such as what justice means, or how to live well as a human being, or perhaps what would constitute good government, or our conceptions of beauty, or how and why human beings use reason. So the Core Text program is aimed at developing the whole individual, and it complements any course of study, whether it be in business, in science, or the humanities. I am a political science major, but some of my friends who are also in the program have been biology majors, chemistry majors, accounting majors. It really complements everything, because no matter what you decide to do in life, you're always going to need to be able to think critically and have strong reading, writing, and communication skills, which are all things that this program really teaches. So the Core Text and Enduring Questions program is a 6-course minor that consists of 4 required courses, 1 from each discipline. So there's a course that called Beauty, Ancient and Modern. There's another one that focuses on philosophical reason, a political science course that talks about Republican government, and another course about theological revelation. And the most fun part is actually that the other 2 courses you get to choose from a selection of book seminars where you have the chance to read and deeply engage with one author or one particular work for an entire semester. So I've taken courses that have focused entirely on the writings of Friedrich Nietzsche, Plato's Republic, Tocqueville's Democracy in America, and really had an opportunity to dive into one particular thinker or one particular idea, which is not something that you get to do in every other class when your attention is divided between many different books or many different authors. So additionally, the Core Text program also hosts events every semester with renowned speakers and presenters. As of right now, they're all virtual, but either they will come to campus or there'll be a Zoom meeting, which is always really interesting to attend. You also have the opportunity to participate in an annual scholarship essay contest, and you'll have opportunities to travel both within the United States and abroad. So 2 years ago on spring break, I actually traveled to Greece with the Core Text and Enduring Questions program. We were able to spend a week over spring break exploring the birthplace of modern politics, democracy, art, and science, literally everything. And then actually this year we had planned a trip to go to Poland, but unfortunately COVID really kind of put a damper on that opportunity. But I'm hoping that within the next few years, Professor Guerra is the director of the Core Text and Enduring Questions program and also the head of the theology department. We're hopeful that he'll be able to plan something fun for all of you in the near future. And then last but not least, the Core Text program really gives you an opportunity to connect with students, faculty, and alumni alike at other roundtable events, symposiums, and in and out of the classroom. So it by far has been joining this program has been one of the best things I've done as a student at Assumption, and I cannot recommend it enough. So with that, I won't take up any more of your time. But if you have questions, I'll be here at the end. And I'll also post my email in the chat if you'd like to reach out to me directly. Thank you. Oh, Professor Vaughn, I believe you are next.
I'm next? Okay. I'm supposed to have a student here, but I grounded him. I guess we're all grounded, right, under these quarantines, but he hadn't written enough for his honors thesis, so I told him he had to stay home and keep writing. And any one of you who knows who he is, you can tease him about this, because I think you know. Right? Yes. Okay, so he's got work to do on this one. He is working on a thesis on the late senator from New York, Daniel Patrick Moynihan, who was also ambassador to the United Nations and ambassador to India. And Adi's working on his time as ambassador to India. What's nice about working on Moynihan is that we have here at Assumption now a Daniel Patrick Moynihan Center for Statesmanship and Scholarship. And we have many of the original documents from his time in India, private letters with other officials, and even some correspondence with the leader of India. So here we have an opportunity to use things that you can't get elsewhere. So it's really nice for Adi to be able to do that. And I'll just talk a little bit more about first this Daniel Patrick Moynihan Center. One of the things we started this year is we've just called it the Senate Project. Moynihan was one of the most famous senators of the 20th century and a towering figure. So we've really focused on the Senate. So what we've done is organize a model Senate. We take events, major bill passages of bills, and assign students to the roles of significant senators from that, and we relitigate them and revote, and we do all these things. Just the other night, on Tuesday, we did a Supreme Court nomination hearing, and our provost, Greg Weiner, played Robert Bork as the students grilled him and interviewed him on his judicial philosophy. He wasn't quite as gruff and grumbly as the original Bork, but he did his best to be annoying. So these are, now, if I switch to political science and to talk about politics, everybody's going to wonder, what on earth is there to talk about in politics these days? It's not like there's anything going on. Here we're talking about a judicial nomination of the Supreme Court. Well, it's not like anybody's suggesting expanding the number of justices in the Supreme Court. So I don't know. What else, what can I talk about that might actually have relevance? Well, we have a class on peace and war. Well, the Russians have just banned all naval vessels from entering into through the Straits of Kerch, so to get to the Ukraine. So, well, okay. So there's kind of peace and war going on, and international relations. It's really, yeah, I guess my problem is if I start talking about it, as everybody who knows who's taken my class, right? Somebody's going to nod. I'm not going to stop. So we have to be really careful to make sure I stop, because I see it's 3:42 and I get Adi's time. I get like 8 minutes, right? I get to fill it all up. The exciting thing about political science is, and it's just like these other departments here, right? I mean, we're all competitive. I want to steal all of Professor Kazatsky's students, and I don't want anybody taking any classes with Professor Thurine, of course, right? That'd be horrible. Imagine that. The great thing about all of these majors, these programs, these departments, the CTEC that Gabriella was telling you about, they work together. Everything you learn in class with Professor Thurine or any of the other excellent professors in English is never wasted for the rest of your life. Never. You will go back to that forever. You will go back to those stories, and they will have deeper meanings for you forever and ever. Right? Every moment of history that you study with Professor Kazatsky, who she didn't tell you is an expert on diplomatic history, if you know, everything you learn from that will have a meaning for the rest of your life and give you a deeper insight. I specialize in politics. That's what I'm going to tell you about politics and say it's the best major and that we do wonderful things. We do, and it is. but I also like my colleagues and I like what they do and I love their students, even though I wish they were all mine. What do you do with political science afterwards? Much like what you do with history or English or CTEC, anything. We have students who work for the Foreign Service in DC. I have a student who works for a medical international nonprofit, the Clinton Health Access Initiative, and she was director of their program in Myanmar. Fascinating stuff. I have students who have gone into international finance and banking and making a lot more money than I'll ever see, right? But from a very narrow focus of politics, I would say that anything you do, as we know now, as you can see, has something to do with politics. Everything you do. So if you're going to work internationally, you have to understand the politics of it. If you're going to work locally, you have to understand your local business. I think I'm probably about to hand it over to Professor D'Souza from education. There's almost nothing more political than the education, the school board in every town and city, right? Education is all about politics, people. We know this and we see it. Ideally, it will be about good politics, right? Politics thought through, politics considered deeply, and politics that draws on the works that you would study in core texts, the literature you would study in the English department, and a deep and broad knowledge of history, not narrow, but broad as well, that you would have from studying other cultures and other times. That's what politics should be. And unfortunately, it gets a bad name because it's often just nasty. That's a really bad way to hand it over to the education department, talking about the nasty school board meetings. But I know that Professor D'Souza is more than adequate to make up for any problems I create. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Professor Vaughn. I'm actually going to let my students talk first. So Kiara, take it away.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for joining us on this rainy Thursday. We could not be happier to have you with us. My name is Kiara Mole, and I am currently a senior, believe it or not, because I most definitely don't. I am double majoring in English and elementary education with a concentration in STEM. A bit of a mouthful. I am always out of breath when I say that on my tours. I'm from Rome, Italy, so a bit of a hop, skip, and a jump away from here, but I can say with confidence that I've definitely found my second family here at Assumption, and that, of course, involves the education department. During my time here, I was paired with Professor D'Souza as my advisor, who actually helped out my map out my 4 years here at Assumption. She worked with me, and we actually planned my courses so that I was able to study abroad. So if you are interested in education, it is in fact possible. And it's funny because I always joke around about the fact that studying abroad for me was actually closer to home when I went to London, England. Now, a little bit more about the education department. I do most definitely feel that my coursework has allowed me to expand just beyond what I thought I was interested in. For example, I sat in on a course that talked about supporting students speaking English as a second language, and my pre-practicum experience that was actually paired with that course allowed me to be exposed to students who were classified as English language learners, and importantly helped apply all of the class knowledge that I have gained over that past semester. I took a course that revolved around helping students with special needs and supporting them, which essentially solidified an interest that I already had, which I hopefully now get to apply for my master's. I took a technology immersion course. Little did I know it came at the perfect time, because now during this crazy hybrid setting, I get to apply all of those technological pieces that I honestly didn't think I would ever use as much as I do now. Because up until March 29th, I was teaching 100% remotely second grade, which is fun. I'm currently in my practicum experience, my student teaching experience at Worcester Arts Magnet School. Now at this point in the semester, fully teaching the whole day by myself, which is kind of scary. Sitting in on parent-teacher conferences, interacting with students in the hybrid setting, and more. I'm not gonna lie, I was very nervous at the beginning of student teaching, but I did most definitely have that comfort in knowing that all of my classes had prepared me for that very moment, no pressure. And I just do want to end, because I know we don't have too much time, by just mentioning how much this year taught us about resilience. And even given the turbulent year that we've had, I did feel immensely supported by the education department and comfortable enough to email my professors or give them a call with any question or concern that I might have. Now, my favorite anecdote when I talk about support at Assumption will make you all laugh. But growing up in Italy, I myself never took a US history class. I learned about European history. So when it was time to implement our micro teaching in my history class with Professor D'Souza, I got chosen to talk about the Pilgrims and the Mayflower, all of which I knew nothing about. I felt comfortable enough just going to knock on her door and ask her a little bit more about the topic at hand and how to best make it accessible for my students. So that's just a great example of the many times that I've received encouragement from various education professors here at Assumption College, and throughout the 4 years have led me to be comfortable enough to be in a spot where I do feel ready to enter the workforce, even given the crazy year that 2020 and 2021 have brought us. But I definitely do feel a lot of comfort knowing that I do feel ready to enter that next step of my life. Thank you to all the support that I have received at Assumption. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Kiara. Kylie.
Okay, Kiara is always so hard to follow. She's amazing. My name is Kylie Thomas. I'm also a senior at Assumption in the education department. I'm actually a secondary education major, so I focus more on the middle school and high school level classes. And a little bit about my experience on campus. I'm involved in the chorale. I'm involved in the education club that we have here on campus. I'm a president of our ACTV club on campus, which is where we kind of produce video segments and news segments every other week for campus events. And like I said, I'm a senior in the education department, so I am in the middle of, well, actually the end of my practicum, which is really crazy. And I'm actually in the school that I attended for high school as well. So that's also been a wild ride. So just a little bit about my experience with the education department. I can't say enough good things about them. The department is phenomenal. They have really prepared me for every curveball that I have been thrown at this last semester, which has been a lot, especially due to the remote and hybrid environment of public education right now. So just a little bit about the progress of being in the education department. So you start off kind of slow in like methods courses, and you learn kind of the basics of lesson planning and classroom management. And then you kind of get to slowly like sink into it. So you start with pre-prac experiences, which is mostly observation based. So you're paired with a teacher, you get to kind of learn from over the course of the semester and talk about what you learned in your classes and learn new strategies. And then eventually you get to teach one lesson, 2 lessons, and in these pre-pracs you teach a couple here and there. So you'll do that for about 2 or 3 semesters throughout your time there, kind of leading you up to practicum, where you will essentially take over a few classes on your own. I think the requirement is about 3 classes you're supposed to take for practicum. I took over 4. And I have to say that the education department really supported me with that decision to kind of take on that 4th class. And they've been supportive with everything, like Kiara said, this new world of remote learning. You know, we were kind of kicked off campus in the middle of our junior year, not knowing what was going to happen, not knowing what was happening with our pre-prac that we were in the middle of, as well as what was going to happen with our practicum that we were trying to prepare for. And I think I can speak for Kiara too when I say this, a lot of teaching revolves around building those relationships with students and being supportive. And the education department here really does lead by example with that. They are so supportive. They've sent out postcards over the past couple months supporting us as we started our practicum. They've sent out emails. We've chatted. I've sent emails back and forth to all of my professors with questions about how to handle certain situations in the classroom. And it's just been a great experience overall. And I am actually from Worcester, and Assumption was right down the street from me the whole time. And it was always kind of a place where I wanted to end up. And I'm so glad that I have made that decision. It was honestly one of the best decisions that I've made in my life, and probably the best decision that I ever will make. So just thank you to the education department for everything that they've done. And if you're thinking about education, you are in the right place.
Thank you, Kylie. So I get to wrap it up. I'm Professor D'Souza from the Education Department, and I love that you got to hear the voices of our students first. I generally get to teach every student who comes through our program. We have, as Dean Fitzpatrick mentioned, a very personalized educational experience, and that holds true across all our departments, including education. I'm going to share just a few slides because there are just some things I think that are helpful to see in terms of the licenses that we offer. All right. So at Assumption, as an undergraduate licensure program, we offer the following. So Kiara has the elementary 1st through 6th, and Kylie has the middle secondary English 5 to 12. And these are all within the state of Massachusetts, but they all transfer over to other states. If you're interested in teaching in a state other than Massachusetts, we help you get the 2nd license or 3rd license. One thing that was highlighted by both of our students, something that's unique to the Assumption program, is that all of our students are education majors and they have a 2nd content major. This is true for elementary, like Kiara, who was both English and elementary education. And of course, our secondary students focus on their content major that they'll be teaching, as well as secondary education. One thing we wanted to highlight as a department, in our most recent review from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Schools, we were granted approval with distinction. This is the very highest level of approval that an institution can receive, and just 3 of the 60+ institutions in Massachusetts that grant licenses have attained this status. A few things I think that really speak to what we've heard across the other departments today are the targeted course design, which really supports and strengthens our program in preparing our teacher candidates. So we have specific courses in the arts and sciences that help our teacher candidates get the strongest content knowledge possible. So for example, in the biology department, we have biology inquiry for educators, and it's designed to support our elementary students in the biological concepts to teach 5th grade in particular. And 5th graders come by bus, they come to Assumption, and our students are able to teach them labs. We have 2 math courses as well as children's literature, all of which support our students in their foundational content knowledge. Another really unique aspect are our subject-specific methods courses. So this means that Kiara's experience she teaches 2nd grade right now. She had a specific course in teaching math methods for elementary students. She had one for science, for English, we usually say English language arts, and one for history. For Kylie, as a secondary English, she would have a specific course designed to prepare the pedagogical concepts of English at the secondary level. Kiara mentioned she's a STEM concentrator, so this is specific to our elementary education program. We designed this program a few years ago really in the conversation with our district partners. They were hoping that elementary teachers had a stronger foundation in the STEM fields of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So we designed a concentration. It's optional, but many of our students take advantage of it to prepare them as elementary educators. And finally, students ask, what about special education? And at Assumption, it's a graduate level program, so it's a 5th year program. So students can earn a bachelor's degree with a license to teach regular education in their 4 years, stay on for just 1 additional year, and get a 2nd license in moderate special needs, and then in 5 years with both a bachelor's, a master's, and 2 licenses. So We are always happy to get emails or answer any questions that you have. And so right now the floor is yours, Max, Victoria, and Gabby, if you have questions for anyone here today. Must have been too thorough.
One thing I think all of the students and faculty here would recommend is that you use the courses you take in the core curriculum to explore your own interests and develop your own skills, and kind of let a kind of organic experience happen as you move toward a decision about what you really want to study. There are certainly students who say, I want to go to med school, and they start out taking chemistry and so on, and that works too. But especially I think in the humanities, it works well to be guided by your own experiences in classes. But we are happy to answer your questions.
I think David, speaking about that, I teach Education 101, which is the introduction to education course called Teachers and Teaching in American Schools. And almost every semester, this one included, I'll have at least one student out of 25 who suddenly says, well, I never really thought I wanted to be a teacher, but I really want to now, right? And there's that opportunity that they just had never thought of before.
Well, Max, Victoria, and Gabby, if you do have any more questions that do maybe pop up later or anything like that, I certainly can also put my email in the chat as well. So you guys can always email me, admissions, or any of our students as well. That looks like Gabby also put her email in the chat as well. So definitely send us an email if you have any questions too. We're really happy to answer those. Really help you make any decision you can about assumptions. So. And if you guys are all set, we really appreciate you guys being here today. But yeah, I hope you have a good rest of your afternoon. We appreciate it.